Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Marcy Axelrod, a powerhouse in the world of human performance and leadership. She is the best-selling author of 2 books, including How We Choose to Show Up, which won the prestigious Hayakawa Book Prize and also endorsed by Mel Robbins. Marcy is the creator of the Show Up system and a consultant who's advised global giants like Cisco, SAP, and Hewlett-Packard. Marcy's work is all about helping people show up more fully at work, at home, and in life. Her approach blends strategy with soul, helping individuals and companies thrive by aligning purpose, presence, and performance. Marcy, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's give our audience a real life example of truly showing up and how that differs from just showing up.
Wow. Well, Quinn, at the beginning of this show, you asked me how I was. So let's take this out of Marcy Axelrod and let's just bring in a listener. So you yourself were just asked, how are you? And actually your morning was kind of tough and you were even brought to tears because a number of events were all coming together and they're all rife with challenge. And you had a choice of answering, things are pretty good. How are you? And the way that I answered this morning, it might have been more than you wanted, but I said, actually, it was a really challenging morning, but I meditated and now I'm a little bit better. Right. And I'm here for you to do my best on this podcast and for your listeners. So that's how I answered. And what I'd love each of your listeners to do is just ask yourself, when you were asked, how are you? Maybe on a Zoom call, maybe in front of a friend, how did it feel to reach for that answer? Did you default to what I call just show up to your answer of, hey, pretty good, because there was comfort, there was solace, maybe there's honesty, but maybe there's some part of you that didn't choose to be vulnerable, or that maybe intentfully chose to not share what you thought was, maybe it's too much. Maybe it's not what this person who I barely know, who's kind of, on the other side of the Zoom call, really needs to understand. Maybe it's actually a gift to them to kind of put up a wall and say, hey, fine, yeah. So that's a big part of showing up. And I hope that I've answered your question about what it means to, a truly show up example. I thought it through. I felt the concern and the fear of here are a whole slew of options. And I actually chose to step into the fear, to the vulnerability, the key word here, authenticity of my truth. And it was received well. So I want to thank you. And I hope that your listeners really do take a moment and reflect and say, what do I have to gain and what do I have to lose from actually answering with more of myself? I don't want to say more honestly. I want to say with more of myself that I can share.
Let's go off that. How do we share as intently as possible,
Yep.
but not be completely honest? Like where's that line that's drawn? Because I know that, okay, for example, I have a good friend that actually says, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your day going? And I love that question because it creates this level of, oh, you're actually asking me, you genuinely want to know, where I am sort of on that spectrum of 1 to 10. And the one day he asked me, it actually caught me off guard, and I got emotional because I wasn't having a good day. And I revealed that. But going back to what you said, Marcy, about, even when someone says, hey, how are you doing today? How real can we be in that moment to be truly showing up as opposed to just showing up?
Yeah. So there are moments in the day and also people for whom and at which time it's not the right time and it's not the right person. However, I encourage more people to step into trust, Step in care and step into some of the truth of showing up, which is reciprocity. So some of the key aspects of showing up, I'd like to formally define it, because there's a model. We're in three roles, not one. There's a continuum. It's not a
Right.
point.
Right.
So it's very rich, it's existential. It truly is. And it's ever present and it's inescapable. Okay, so we're going to get to that. But the reciprocity, the world will show up to you the way you show up to the world. So you picture that infinity symbol of the figure eight on its side, right? It's also a Mobius strip where you're going around and then you come back around and then you're going and coming and you end up on both sides. You end up on the inside and the outside, and it goes on forever. What you put out there, the energy, the trust, the care, whether that person who is a colleague you've interacted with on a somewhat superficial level over and over, or the friend or the person you bump into in the park walking your dog, whoever says, "How are you?" Right? If you limit what you give them, you limit their ability to truly show up for you. So what you're really doing, let's just dissect this, Quinn. What you're
Uh,
really doing when you default to a, "Hey, I'm fine." What you're doing is saying, first, I don't trust that you will hold my emotion with the open heartedness, with the care with which I need to be received, with which I want to be received by you and by the world. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I don't trust you. You're saying, I'm living in fear that when I give you a vulnerable truth, it won't be honored. What you're also saying is, I'm just going to hold myself back. I'm going to live a smaller life because I'm protecting myself. So one of the things that I recently learned about deathbed wishes, and actually Steven Pinker did this research. So it used to be that almost everyone on their deathbed said two things. There have actually been two more that have been added now. Okay. Number one, I wish I'd spend less time at work. Number two, I wish I'd spend more time with the people I care about. Number three, now, I wish I'd been able to be more authentic. What does this mean? I wish I had looked at the people who I love and more often said, "I love you," instead of "hi" and "bye," right? And then I wish I had lived larger and been true to myself, an authentic life, instead of doing what society says. I need this type of job and this type of house and this type of title and car and spend the money. No. What people are saying is, I wasn't true to myself. I did these things that I was told to do, but it wasn't what was significant to me. Those things are huge. Live an authentic life and don't play small, right? And I feel that that really comes in here with the default of "I'm fine." It's also a metaphor, that whole default of, "I'm fine. How are you?" By the way, we're reciprocating. How are you? Are we asking in a way where we're signaling, "Give me your honest truth. I'm here to honor you as a human being, not as an object." So there's a lexicon that's part of showing up. We often live to each other, which is a problem. To. And for the people just listening, I'm kind of hitting my fists at each other. When you're moving quickly, so just showing up, which is the level 2 out of 3. So 1 is barely there, 2 is just showing up, which is like you're on the go, you're keeping it moving, you're checking the boxes, you're using spotlight attention, which is the kind of closed attention, not the open attention. We can talk about that. It's left brain hemisphere focus, not right. This is massive. And the other thing that you're doing when you're on the go, just showing up, is that you're more in your frontal cortex than your heart and your body. So it's not an embodied thing. Otherwise, "How are you?" would come across more like, "Are you?" Did you hear that? "How are you?"
mhm.
Not, "I'm fine. How are you?" Did you feel that? Like, how you receive it in your body is different. The chemicals, like when I say, "How are you?" I'm turning up your oxytocin. I'm turning up your dopamine, your serotonin. I'm turning down your cortisol, your stress. You're feeling differently in your body. So you're inhabiting the space differently with me. And I'm bringing you more into that depth of presencing, into that situation member role. I mentioned there were 3 roles. So now you're not just a self, you are presencing in this dynamic, emergent dance with me. And you're in the flow with me. I am your environment now. You are mine, right? And the care shows up. You move into your heart mode, as Jim Doty says. Jim Doty, the head of the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism Research. I studied there, and everything changes. So I'm going to pause here because I've said a lot, but I've just touched on self role, situation member role. They're massive. There's also a role of us as part of something larger, our societal role. That's our third role. We can get into the roles later, but just some of the things that I've brought up is how we literally change each other. And I want people to never do that complacent, just show up of, hey, I'm fine. How are you?
It's interesting when you said that, and how you changed the tone and inflection of saying, how are you? I've more than once, and it doesn't really matter who it is, but I've had someone, say, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Good." And they're like, "No, how are you?" And it's like this wave comes over you. It's like, oh, this person truly cares. They're allowing me now to be myself, genuine, authentic self, and to truly show how I'm feeling in the moment. And I think we need more of that. I mean, you're going to encounter people in your life that you see in passing. You walk by at the office and so forth. But it's so good to get that feeling from somebody, and that goes back to the, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your day going? I mean, that takes it deeper. It takes it down another level. My question, based on what you just said, though, and just showing up and then truly showing up and barely there. How does it feels to me like um it takes a lot of mental energy
Mm.
to want to truly show up in every interaction.
Yeah, you don't truly show up in every interaction. Who can be at their peak performance all
Right.
the time? You absolutely can't. You need to go back to just showing up to regroup, to reset, to
Mm.
re-nourish, to invigorate. What the book recommends is, maybe shoot 20% of your day to truly show up. And what I recommend people do, think across your day, think across your next week, whatever phase of planning you want to focus on, and say, for what today? And maybe for whom am I choosing to truly show up? Who gets that energy from me where I'm really going to make sure I'm my best self with them. For a lot of people, it's when they're leaving their home in the morning before work or whatever they're going out for. And then before they walk back in to greet a partner, to greet their kids, to greet that next um, set of kind of unstructured free time where you get to choose, how am I investing my moments right now? So I've been told there are some people who put it in their calendar and it pops up. How am I choosing to show up? Some people use it as a preparing tool to remind themselves to reset. But there's a lot more than just the reset. And I'd be happy to show you some of this. There's actually a model for how nature designed humans to show up. That's what the book has. And I'm going to send you this slide, but it shows there's 3 roles and there's a continuum. And the continuum from barely there to just showing up to truly showing up, the idea of the continuum, it's actually a circle. We are always jumping around this at all times.
Mm.
Sometimes you wake up, you're refreshed. You hear the birds chirp and you just pause right there and you hear the birds chirp And what's going on is a flow of attention. And I'm going to explain this of attending. I like to use the present progressive because we're in the flow. You notice, and then that's this on ramp, this inductive state that leads you to tune in. And then once you tune in, especially if it's with another person, what happens is you feel with. That's the third state. You feel with. And then it leads you into your heart, and your compassion comes online, and then you enact care. So this might be going on back to the how are you, where someone either says, what's your 1 through 10, which I want to talk about, because that's abstracting, which I recommend, or just someone who you bump into who looks at you and says, how like, Quinn, really, it's me, Marcy, right? How are you? I'm not going to let you default to just showing up. It's me. Come on. So notice, tune in, feel with, enact care. What happens is it leads you from just showing up into truly showing up. So sometimes in the morning, you wake up and you're just in that state where you're going to default to truly showing up. But other times you wake up and it's like, okay, I've got a meeting. I've got this. I've got to get breakfast for the kids. I remember this. I'm on a tight schedule. And what you're doing is defaulting through all of it. None of it's meaningful. You don't notice how the sun is hitting the tree outside the window. And the hour or two go by and now you're at work, and like how much have you really lived that morning, right? So we're always moving along it, but then you can reset. You can notice it and reset. So I want what the continuum is. It's basically a permission system. You have permission to bounce along this all day long. And so does everybody else. Because everyone else is living on the continuum too. So maybe your teenage son comes down and they're not giving you the time of day, and you're trying to remind them to do something, and they're like, whatever, mom. And then that stress comes up, remembering that everyone's on the continuum and that they're all on their own journey and that you are too. It gives you permission to just reset. And when you reset, everyone else feels it. And there's no way they don't. Have you ever been next to someone and not actually absorbed their emotion? It's impossible not to.
Energy. Yeah.
Anyway, I've whole chapter in the book, I believe it's chapter 11, that explains the interconnectedness of humanness that the last 300 years of industrialization have kind of taught out of us with our education system, how our language uses phrasing. It makes us separate islands, which leads to feelings of anxiety and loneliness and separateness and stress. And we don't even recognize, what is this? Why are we miserable? And it's because we don't feel the interconnectedness with which humanity and nature is designed. Anyway, I'll pause there.
I absolutely want to get into the connectivity between humans and nature, and we'll do that in a few minutes. I want to go back because my philosophy, which I've deemed and given a name to, effort over results, only started, even though it's not a new concept, but for me and how it applied to my life started a few years ago. And I'm saying this because I want to know, and now I live it and eat, breathe it, and I've written a book on it. I want to know how your journey started, and when did the truly showing up mantra labeled got attached to this, because it's through life experience. It's through something you experienced that changed the way you think, and you're like, there's something more here, and you decided to go deep into it, and now you've created a movement around it, right? So when did
Yeah.
this start? What are the origins of the show up philosophy?
Yeah, the philosophy, it's a science. And I thank you for acknowledging it is a movement, right? So my story, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people really find it something they can relate to because it's so concrete. So at the age of 6, and everyone lives the same story to a certain extent, right? So because we're all the result of our past experience, right? Humans are experience designed entities. Everything about us is from our experience
Yeah.
because that, literally how our neurons developed as infants is based on how we were held and whether we were eye to eye and whether it was skin on skin. I mean, so at age 6, my family moved from Baltimore to Boston because my father was offered this position at Harvard to create the first department of nuclear medicine. Nuclear medicine didn't exist. My father figured out that you can drink something radioactive. It was thallium at the time, and then take a picture. And that is the precursor of MRI and CT scans and all of this. So,
Wow.
so we moved to Boston. Both my parents are now very busy. My mother's a physician also, and little Marcy, age 6, didn't get the attention that I needed. And I didn't see examples of people acting out, so I acted in. And what that means is that the my genetics were turned on by the environment, so I started to stutter, and I literally couldn't speak. I couldn't get my ideas out. And so my self mirror, all of us have this mirror, right? We reflect back ourselves. So my definition of self, and for the people just listening, I've got my hands facing me. Now I'm turning them outward. Myself started to turn outward and observe others. I couldn't show up as I chose. So I was looking, how's everybody else showing up? And it drove me crazy because you got, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. You got the bully over there. He's slamming everyone out in the four square. You've got the scaredy cat in line who knows it's social suicide. He's going to get up there, and is the bully going to slam him out? And there's the teacher over there seeing all this, doing nothing. And I was screaming inside. I felt like there were shocks of lightning coming up through my feet, shooting through my skull, literally cracking my skull. I was stressed because I couldn't even go to the teacher and say, why are you letting this happen? So next seminal experience out of 3, I'm 12 and I'm brought to a rehabilitation hospital because they have some new thing where you talk into a machine and a red light would go on if you did this easy onset method for stutterers the right way. And to me, it sounded like nothing I was ever going to use, but I was disciplined and I read my 12 hours of crap every day into the machine. So the red light would go on. And I knew I was wasting my life doing that. And I couldn't really tell my parents, like, do you know what you're paying all this money for me to do every day for my summer? But in the rehabilitation facility, it's filled with elders who had strokes, let's say, and they were learning to hold a fork and bring it to their mouths. And they were learning to sit and stand. And they had these expert plans with these like sheets that they would flip with all the recommendations. And then they had experts by their side. And I said to myself, even people with a lifetime of wisdom, with experts by their side and with well-made plans, still can't show up as they choose. And I said, wow, where's the roadmap? Where's the playbook? Why is this so hard? So from that experience, I set out, and all of my unstructured free time was devouring psychology and neuroscience and evolutionary biology and behavioral economics, everything I could to figure out, how are we supposed to show up? And that's when I realized, as nature designed. You used a phrasing, Quinn, connecting, I think it was behavior with nature, or your
Humans to nature, yeah.
humans to nature. Okay,
Yeah.
I just, to be very blunt, I'm like, can we just blow that up?
Sure.
Because humans are
Yeah.
nature. Humans are nature. And it's not that we're here and the environment's there. We are each other's environment. Because how you feel is how you think, behave, what you give to the world.
Haven't we become disconnected from nature? And I think that's what I meant when I said connecting humans to nature, is that I think we need to reconnect humans to nature. we are
Yes.
we are part of nature, and I think through industrialization and now more recently social media and everything, we've become disconnected so
Right.
much
Right.
that it's important to reconnect.
All of my success has been around understanding how human beings are designed to show up. right, with a huge foundation of psychology and neuroscience. And that's what the book's about. So I mean, there's a framework that I've built, and it's supported by 20 years of research. The global study started in 1999 for a very big high tech firm. And when the CEO tells the 120,000 employees, spend good time with the survey that Marcy and her team sent out, the data set that you get back is extraordinary.
Mm.
And then almost every year since then, I have added to it because I do evergreen surveys. Believe it's active on my website right now. If anyone wants to respond to the survey, it's very short. It's only 10 questions. I would love you to choose to showup.com. Yeah. So that's where the model comes from. That's my story. And everyone out there, everyone you see, the person walking across the parking lot, the clerk in the store has the same story about there was some struggle from when they were very young, and that designed their path and the choices that they make. And it's how they envision success, what it means to them, and how they treat the world.
Yeah.
And I hope this leads to compassion.
It's interesting when you said that, because when I think about the origins and ideas of the book that I'm writing, it took going back to my childhood and understanding where this thought process, like I said, it only is in the last 3 years that I've really developed my philosophy of what effort over results means. But when I look back, it was born out of childhood experiences.
Right.
And I speak about those experiences in the book. Something I want to dig a little bit deeper on. So you've spent a couple decades, maybe more, advising big names in tech. Here's what I've noticed in my 2 decades of being in the corporate world where I work, is that I don't one of the reasons why I'm frustrated with that environment is because I'm not allowed to genuinely show up as my true self. And I find that the corporate world there's this cloak, this veil of corporate language which you must use, corporate attire which you must wear,
Right.
and it's just so it feels to me very fake. And I want to dig into the truly showing up, because I do truly show up in my work with my clients, the relationships I make, and it's almost as if it's seen as a bad thing, because this isn't how we do things. This isn't how corporate world acts. This is, So when you started working with the corporate world and some of the biggest names out there, what did you see between what you're trying to bring to the table within the corporate world of truly showing up, and that almost, did you see a pushback? Because I'm sure they loved it, they drank the Kool-Aid, they want to believe it, but then when they go back to their day to day, it just goes back to the same, white, the collar corporate world. Do you see a dichotomy there?
Yeah. So let's use the word permission. Permission's very key here. A lot of corporate cultures historically don't offer permission for human beings to be our true selves. Okay. We can't be authentic. We're filling a role. We're supposed to leave our personal life on the side, which is a total farce. Because you always bring all of you to how you show up. There's no division and there's no balance.
Yeah.
There's a flow, that blow up balance. That's a total farce. But so the corporate world basically says, I want this little piece of you. And that's why they don't get your inventiveness and your fun and your play and your creativity. It gets a work mode that fractures your focus and makes it very small. And unfortunately, when you do that, you leave your heart and your body, you go into your frontal cortex and you get rational stuff and you get disembodied stuff. And the people with you become objects. You go from being with and for others and yourself and society as a whole, wanting a betterment. You go to being to. So, part of the show up lexicon is to go from to with and for.
Mm.
But let me get deeper here. There's a set of 4 things that people do that divide us within ourselves. And when you cut off part of yourself to get that corporate persona, you kind of default to the fear. You can't be your vulnerable, real, truth, authentic self. So what shows up is this performative mode. And there's four things. And I first read these from the Arbinger Institute. They're excellent. And you yourself, Quinn, invoked this better than, right? My town, needs to us to be better than, so we can't really grow beyond it. Beyond, but better than, people show up as lesser than. I'm insecure. I have imposter syndrome. I don't belong to be in this. I don't belong in this room or at this table with the experts. So there's better than, there's less than, there's need to be seen as is the third thing. I need to be seen as a certain thing. I'm a strong person. I get my opinions out there. Or I'm the collaborator and I can't really assert that, what would really happen here if we did that? Let's really play this out. Because then I seem like I'm stirring up issues or trouble or not going along. The fourth one, I deserve. So there's I'm lesser than, I'm better than, I need to be seen as, or I deserve, right? I deserve to be in this role and this other person shouldn't be competing with me. And I need to be put as the lead of project X, Y, or Z. So this is what the corporate world does when it tells you to dress a certain way and look a certain way and speak a certain way. A big part of my success with executives, and by the way, they've always been men, they've always been older than me. Well, not always, but mostly. Within a meeting or two, they look at me and they say, Marcy, I've never been able to speak to someone this way. They say, I just told you stuff like I've never told anybody this. And what's really going on there, and this is what's essential that's missing from the corporate cultures that aren't as successful as they could be. What's missing is emotional safety. It's actually what the Aristotle Project showed. Google about 10 years ago did a project that Aristotle was missing, safety, emotional safety. So you can't truly show up if you cleave out part of yourself and put it on the shelf when you go to work. It's just not going to happen.
It's like severance. When you walk through the door of the corporate company and you lose that outside, you're outie, right? For those of you who recognize that reference from the show. But that's it. As soon as you show up to the front door of the company you work for, it's like leave the baggage at the door, leave your outie, outside, and now you're your corporate self.
Yeah. So instead of talking about it, Quinn, I want to give people solutions. Okay. And that's a big word. Let me back that down. I want to give people a path forward. And path forward comes in a lot of forms. The forms that I'm going to give you are a few phrases. And the phrases are safe. And when you can feel safe bringing these phrases out, everyone just exhale, reset, and it changes the conversation into more of what it needs to be. So I'm going to throw out some examples, and I hope that people get the gist and can make it their own and make it fit the situations that they're in. Phrasing such as, tell me more about that idea. Like, how would this client bring that to bear? What would happen if we also introduced XYZ? What do you think Jane or Joe would think about this? How would it really play out if? So what I'm doing is I'm offering open-ended questions that can help a person or a group reflect on things. And I'm creating space. What it's doing is it's sidestepping I totally disagree, this isn't going to work, right? And it creates a welcoming environment to dive deeper in a safe way. So I'm hoping I gave enough examples that people can kind of understand it. Right? Because I'm never going to say the perfect thing for what anyone needs in the moment.
It's very situational, but those statements that you just made to me speak to curiosity and leadership. And I actually wrote an article for LinkedIn in the last few weeks about that and why the new form of leadership needs to be curious. You need to ask questions. You need to give people the freedom to speak without repercussions. Like we can't let, the inmates run the asylum, but at the same time, you need to give people the opportunity to be themselves. And that's how you build trust. And so those statements, like you said, what do you think about this? Or how would, Joe or June feel about this? It's inquisitive questions that gets everybody thinking a little bit deeper, but also makes people feel psychologically safe. And I
Right.
did an entire podcast on psychological safety in the workplace. And it's incredible how some companies, primarily run by boomer owners, and
Right.
older Gen X owners, still feel like, listen, you're getting a paycheck. When you show up, you're here to do work for me. You're not here to talk about your drama at home. And once again, there's a line there, but still, it's like Google's Aristotle project just proved that.
Right.
Psychological safety is what creates sustainable success.
Right. And I want to link this
Yeah.
to every other domain in life. Attachment between a primary caregiver and a child, which is what launches
Mm.
the skill level of that human being for the rest of their lives, to be able to look someone in the eye and say, you know what, that just isn't right for me, or this just isn't true for my experience, or I don't really feel that good about that, or I'm not, I'm feeling a little sense of threat right now. You know, the ability of that person to choose a partner who's gonna be your lifelong person, to choose a job that's a good fit, to be able to make a corporate culture what it needs to be the leader that that human being can be. All of that is created by the same psychological safety that we are talking about right now. Your integrity is on the line. It is literally about, can you recognize how safe you feel or don't feel, and then be able to step into that in a productive, healthy way. And you can either put words on it and say, we need to pause right now because there's something about the decisions that this group is making that just doesn't feel quite right to me. And let's just pause for a minute and like write down on a piece of paper, where does this decision live in each of us? Does it feel good? What are we worried about? And then let's come back together and talk about it, right? That's what it would look like in a team meeting. What it would look like with a friend is, I'm hearing you say things that actually concern me, because you might be going down a path in that relationship that's not who you want to be, or that's not the person that I know, or that's going to get you into trouble. I'm going to just show you right now the model of showing up lets us actually create a chart that I give an example of in a team meeting where people are negotiating a contract, but you basically rate whether someone's high, medium, or low in how grounded they are in themselves, their readiness within a moment, how connected they are with the long-term impact of whatever the thing is, the decision, the behavior. And you can actually rate where different people are on a team. Anyway, I will not go more into that, but it very much relates to the psychological safety that we're talking about, because showing up has skills, self-grounding, situational readiness, and societal connectedness directly relates to what we're talking about.
So how do leaders, and I'm going to stay in the business world for a while, but how do leaders build cultures where showing up is the norm, not the exception? And I think we've touched upon it with allowing people to be their genuine, authentic selves. I think that's part of it. Is there anything else, any other elements where culture is, that showing up culture is just becomes the norm? And what do leaders have to do first to start to implement that?
Okay, so trust. So we brought up psychological safety. That's absolutely massive because it promotes authenticity, which is absolutely huge at the individual and kind of corporate level. Trust is a foundational element that everyone needs to be able to bring their full selves to the workplace, to friendships, every relationship they have, including their relationship with themselves, which is the quality of their effort, right? That they can bring forward. What is trust? Let's get deep with this. Ultimately, there is an embodied experience, right? We are experiential beings. There is an embodied experience on the continuum of threat or comfort that is our experience of trust. Leadership and being a good manager has to have a foundation where you can sit down with a colleague, maybe who's not doing a great job, and say, look, here's the experience of this client that we had with a decision that you made last week. We need to be able to depend on you to create this other type of experience. What got in the way? How can I help you? How can I provide what was missing such that there's trust that you can do this quality of work, right? So that's a skill development type of discussion that's often very, very touchy. But with a team overall, to create trust, there are a number of things that can be done. One of the big ones is that you have to show care. Under trust is care. The center of truly showing up is care. So now we're getting back to the how are you? As opposed to the like, how is everybody? I'm going to pause there. But I mean, being open hearted, and just something else that I really want to bring in here is that the more you show up with care, since showing up is reciprocal, right? The world shows up for you as you show up for the world. And there's a symbiosis and a flow. When you show up with care and you start your Monday morning 9 a.m. meetings with like, hey, would everybody tell us something that was meaningful about their weekend? Or could everyone tell us something that was meaningful about the project that we just finished last week? That was a really big haul over 6 weeks. Like, great job. I want everyone to tell me what was meaningful to them about that. That's the sort, and then you listen, you have to give it space. You reflect back, you give it space, and then you move to the next person. So that's the sort of thing, trust and care. And that's an example of how to implement it.
I'll challenge only because I want to, but easier said than done. And the right person. I feel like there's a lot of leaders out there, and I know I kind of threw boomers and Gen X under the bus because they're the majority of business owners these days and corporate leaders. But I feel like if you don't already have that in you, it's very hard to start doing it because then it looks fake, right? It's like, oh, here's the C-suite deciding to try something new by implementing care and safety, emotional safety. It takes time. Obviously, it takes time, but it's not just an overnight transformation. Like, this is something that takes months, if not years, to try to make it become the fabric of a company. Is this something that can be transformational quickly, or do you find in your work with larger corporations that it's a long journey for them?
So the answer is it's a long haul. However, it's human by human. And what you're doing is changing people who were objects in your world to just getting a job, right? Someone like in a box doing a role, getting a job done. That's an object. We often behave to each other, as I said, not for and with. What you're doing is you're rehumanizing the workplace and making it human to human. I have a word that I developed that I put on a corporate culture that truly shows up. It's called an Alltelligent culture.
I saw that, yeah.
And that is connected with intent to serve. That is the skill for our role as more than just ourselves. That's our societal role. The skill is, once again, connected with intent to serve. By the way, Maslow's hierarchy has actually been updated. He has self-actualization at the top, and it turns out he came back himself. And he said contribution is the top, not self-actualization. What he's doing, remember my story when I was 6 and I took my self lens and I turned it outward. That is what he came to. He took his self lens. Actualizing yourself is when you turn yourself toward society, toward others, and your life is fulfilled through service, through contribution. And that is what the leaders are doing. That is what changes a culture, getting back to nature, which is the example of truly showing up, which very actively destroys and recreates itself. And that's a huge thing to recognize. Picture a tree. Let's use a tree as a model of leadership. You could say that the trunk, the biggest, most manifest aspect of the tree, that's the main thing. But wait a minute. Now picture the branch and the smaller branch. And what is on the edge there? What's all that green? Those are the leaves. It's the leaves that drink in the sunshine. It's the leaves that transform the oxygen to CO, right? It's the leaves that ultimately are pulling through the water from the roots into the trunk. It's the leaves that are doing the breathing, that are transpiring. Okay? So where's the leadership? Is it, what the trunk, the CEO and executive team needs to be doing is honoring and recognizing a tree would die without the leaves. And it's the leaves that are the workers that are out there all over the world, the ones doing everything, whatever your front line looks like, right? Whatever your supply chain looks like, all of that out there. So, very much the corporate culture that we're looking for is one that reflects nature more directly, because that's what truly showing up is.
So when I think of the three, and I hope it's okay to say stages, but barely there, just
Yes.
showing up, truly showing up. And okay, so now let's, maybe you want to challenge me on the synergies that I mentioned at the start of the show between effort over results and showing up.
Okay.
Is, for me, I believe that, and I'm on that continuum. Effort or results believes in like in what you were saying about the barely there, just showing up and truly showing up, and that I think for a lot of people, and this goes to James Clear's Atomic Habits, for them to get something, they jump right ahead to the result. I'll give you an example.
Yep.
Someone who's trying to become healthier. Okay, they're
Yep.
on a health and wellness journey, but they can't find the energy to even go to the gym. My philosophy behind that, and I dealt with this with a client. I said, just put your gym bag by the door.
Right.
Start there. Let's just start there. Just put your gym bag by the door. That's the barely there. That's the barely there. But it was a reminder. It's a trigger. It's a reminder of what I ultimately want to do. And then I said, hey, let's go to the gym today and we'll just sit and watch people work out.
Right.
So it just showed up. And then eventually, because for a lot of people, it's the getting there. It's the first step. It's the first
Right.
little things
Yeah.
of effort that finally get them over that hump. And I think effort over results lands on your spectrum in the just show up, most certainly, because if you just show up, you're still going to get more out of it than if you're barely there or don't show up at all. And then ultimately, now what are you going to bring to the table when you do show up? And that's where you transcend into truly showing up. And now those workouts become more enthusiastic and you're taking it in. And that's why I'm seeing the synergies between the two, because I just tell people, listen, stop worrying about the loss of 50 pounds. Stop worrying about whether you're going to be able to bench press this or whether you're going to, complete writing a book. Just do the first most
Right.
minuscule step.
Right.
Show up.
Yeah. Well, just showing up is definitely better than barely there. I'm
Not
really
wrong.
glad you mentioned James Clear and Atomic
Yeah.
Habits, because truly showing up explains that behavioral approaches are superficial, and that if you really want to get, and that's why they don't really work in the long term. And that's why the New Year's resolutions disappear by like January 5th. So let's talk about what really does matter, because there has to be a fundamental belief system about the way the world works, and then that drives you, and then you don't need the behavioral stuff. So this is going on, Quinn, every moment of every day, because guess what? You're always showing up. You can never not be. When you're staring at the images behind you, for example, of the football jersey, helping you to remember and relive your football days, and you felt great about yourself, and you were learning what life's about and how to show up. When you are doing that, it's changing you.
Mm.
And then you come on a podcast and you look at me and you say, Marcy, it's nice to meet you. And that emotion that you just experienced from how you showed up, I'm experiencing that. And I'm going to take that into the next meeting that I have and the next person who I show up to. So the point is, it's the belief system that you have about how the world works, and that the massive impact and import that we all have on everybody. Do you choose to buy a book? Do you choose not to? Do you choose to shop on Amazon, right, or anywhere else online and pull through a 6 continent supply chain? Yes or no? Do you choose to buy a movie ticket, or to take a walk in the woods, or to look at, photos of your family from 20 years ago when your kids were these little munchkins and you would, hold them, right? Every moment that you show up, you are transferring into the next person and the next person and to our economy of consumption or our economy of being versus doing, right? You're so systems that underpin the truth of how humans are designed to show up. And when you think this way about, I want to impact my family by investing in my health, and I'm going to the gym because I want to be healthier. And then they see it, and then they feel it, and then they think it, and then they do it. This is the truth of showing up instead of habit based or behavioral based approaches. It's more soul based. It's being who you want to be. So I'm going to pause there. The book explains this
So
more.
yeah, and I want to talk about the book because the book isn't just theory. It's
No.
it's full of practical tools. So what is one exercise or mindset shift from the book that my listeners could start applying today?
What I want to do right now is recommend one thing that people do to practice truly showing up. And I just experienced it yesterday. So I'm going to tell you the quick story of meeting with a gentleman, very successful chief operating officer of a company that does pretty significant work on the infrastructure in Manhattan. And he told me the way that he was raised, he always has to take care of everybody and be one step in front of everybody and kind of be the hero of everything and keep it all going. And he's very successful at it, and people really like him. So he doesn't over control, but he's not really right here, right now, because the moment he's right here, right now, he's like, okay, it's copacetic now. What else? Right. So his mind is gone. And what I recommended, which people tell me has an amazing impact, there was someone sitting next to us at the cafe. And I said, tell me about that person. Well, what are they doing here? It's 11 o'clock and they're at a cafe. Why aren't they at work? They should be doing this. I'm better than them because I'm always at work and I'm always doing my thing. And I said, okay, judgment, better than. Just breathe and keep looking. Oh, he's with somebody. Well, what is she doing? The judgment shows up and it's like, maybe that's his daughter. Well, what is he doing? He's not paying attention to her. More judgment. Keep looking. Oh, he doesn't look very happy. He looks concerned. And he looks at me again for affirmation or something. And I just keep looking. So now he's open-hearted. He's moved from his head into his body. And he looks at me again. And in a very different tone, very different pace, he said, I'm feeling sad. He said, there's something sad. So I'll tell you what just happened, Quinn, and I'm going to show you. It was literally exactly what's in the book. So I've got a lot of science-based references of this and what he did. It's literally what's on this page 84 of the book. He moved from judging and the very low end of just showing up into truly showing up. And the 4 phases are noticing. So first he noticed, and then he tuned in, and then he felt with. And for those of you listening, I'm pointing on the continuum, going up the continuum. Notice, tune in, feel with, and then enact care. He said, my God, Marcy, for almost the first time in my life, I'm here with you. This is leadership. This is the COO he wants to be. This is the person who's going to change the culture of the company so that people don't phone it in and quietly quit and just do their thing and disappear and maybe kind of do a partial job or a shoddy job or not bring their inventiveness or not bring their, maybe what would happen if I do it this way? Well, right? Now he's also the parent he wants to be. And now he's the friend he wants to be. And he literally said, you changed my life. And he said, and I'm like, I don't want to be paid for this. I meet with people one-on-one and I do this. And I said, what I'd like you to do is reflect on this. And I want you next week next week, I want you to send me a message. What, if anything, changed? What changed for you? What are you doing now that's different? And what impact does it have? So, the quick answer, what do I want people to do? I want you to look. It can be a colleague at work. It can be someone in a parking lot getting out of their car. It can be your child from across the room, your spouse, someone. Just look at them and give it some time. And you just watch someone and notice yourself going from some assumptions. Maybe it's judgment, maybe it's not. And you're going to move into care. And then you're going to truly show up to that person, to the next moment, to your next thing. You're going to truly show up.
That is something that I think takes a lot of maturity. And the question that ran through my head as you're telling me this story is, why as humans are we more likely or preconditioned to be judgmental than curious? And now I'm quoting Ted Lasso, but more judgmental than curious, because I myself have only really in the last few years on my own journey have started being curious about why a person acts a certain way. I'll even be walking downtown and I'll see a homeless person, and the thought that goes through my mind isn't, what a derelict. My thought that goes through my, like, what happened in their life that changed their life that they're here right now. When someone acts out, when I was teaching, I was a high school teacher for a few years, and I think back to the way the kids would act up in class, or like completely fail the class, never show up, so to speak. And I
Right.
was like, well, they're just lazy. And then I'm looking
Yep.
back now going, what was their home life like? What kind of environment were they growing up in? Things like that. And I love this transformation of myself, and it speaks to exactly what you were saying. And it really is, be curious, not judgmental. Take the time. And I'm frustrated that leaders don't take the time to try to understand their people.
Human beings.
Yeah,
It's this is Juan, he's our head of whatever, or this is
yeah.
Janet, she's our human relations coordinator. Like,
Yeah, it's just a label and a title, and a person in the window, through the door you're looking at. But it's like, what it's generally the answer always is, I don't have time to get to know everybody and to care for everybody. I'm running a business here, and there's like 50
that's
people, 100, and it's like, no, you just care, you just choose not to.
so that person created a limit. The limit of success in life, in relationships, in business, in anything is gated by someone's ability to be truly connected with themselves, because that's how connected you can be, not just with another human, but also with an idea, with a concept, with anything, with a goal, with a strategy. So that's why the first role, grounding within yourself. What is that? A tree is not a TREE. It's not. You aren't a name, Quinn. It would take you a lifetime to explain to me who you are. It would take me a lifetime to explain to anybody what this true hour is. There is so much more there. So it's really important to recognize in business, we are, and in society now, we are talking, it's STEM, and it's code, and it's bullshit. Okay. It's an abstraction. Living in the map is not living. We have to live in the territory. You have to feel the breeze. You have to walk up the hill. This is what life's about. And the left hemisphere that led us to like grab and get things, to focus on the rabbit and go and kill it so that we could feed ourselves, that is not at all going to let us stay alive, which is the other thing we had to do. We had to feed ourselves, but not be fed to everything else. To not be fed to everything else. Thank you, Ian McGilchrist, who wrote thousands of pages about this. He's a psychiatrist from the UK. He explained the right hemisphere is the one that sees across time and sees the bigger picture and steps back, and that can give you the perspective of living in the real life, being in the relatedness of everything, because everything is about the relatedness, right? How are you relating to your authentic self, to truth, to anything, to choices that you make? That's everything. And the right hemisphere is the one that feels with. The right hemisphere is the one that enacts care. Leadership needs to be more right hemisphere focused. You've always got to go back and forth, think in a rational way, and then step back and contemplate and relate it to the more, right? What improvements in the product or service that we offer would help the person get their job done better in circumstance X? That might sound left brain, but it's not. It's right, because you're in the flow of someone else's world. And that has to be a right hemispheric thing, because you are connecting a whole bunch of things that are in essence in service of someone else. You will never be able to really get there with a get it done, just show up, check the box, left hemisphere way of living. And that's like a whole podcast unto itself. But the book includes the neuroscience that explains how this happens. And you can help someone turn on their connectedness system just by helping them learn to breathe. Just breathe. And it shifts us. When you hug someone, count to 6 seconds. When you kiss your spouse, 6 seconds. There's a lot of neuroscience here. A lot of it's in the book. I'm going to stop, but this is extremely scientifically based. And to be the leader, entrepreneur, and parent and friend that you want to be, you really have to understand the truth about showing up.
I wholeheartedly believe this is science-based. This is not, once again, just not a theory. I mean, this is something that it's been proven. It's interesting you mentioned the 6-second hug. My wife last night before she went to bed, she goes, all right, 8 seconds. Now, for her, she read somewhere as 8 seconds. And so we did. We hugged and she counted. And it was kind of cool, because it's funny when you do hug your spouse, your kids, whatever, how long does it truly really last? For most people, a second, maybe two. But there is something that, yeah, there's something that physiologically changes in you when it goes to that 6 to 8 seconds, or potentially longer. But the physiology and the nature behind this, and I wish we had more time to dig so much deeper into this, and maybe we'll do a second episode in a few weeks. That'd be awesome. But tell me, let's talk about you right now. What is next for you? You have the 2 books. Where can we find them? Number one, where can we find the 2 books? Is there another book, a bigger, broader mission that you have on the horizon?
So the books, yeah, go to my website, choose-to-show-up.com, or go to Amazon. And the book is How We Choose to Show Up. Easy to find. I also do TED Talks, but the book is so much more substantive. Bigger things on the horizon, absolutely. I mean, by the time Mel Robbins recognizes me, I'm very hopeful that a lot of doors will open. Instead of writing books, I'm using speaking and podcasts to get the word out there. The more people who truly show up, the better a world, the healthier the world will be. It would literally take care of the environmental issues, the division. Really, there's a lot of depth there. I put in the chat here something that's really important. We've been talking about the question, ultimately, how do I be better?
Yeah.
That's not a show up question. I mean, it's a just show up question. The truly show up question is, who can you be when you're with me? Who can I be when I'm with you? So once again, we're turning our self mirror outward, right? The surveys that I put out there ask, how often do you think about how I want others to feel in my presence? Those are truly show up questions.
I love that. I love that. Actually, it's funny. My daughter, who's 24, but I still see her as a little girl. I told her the other day, I said, I love being around you because I can be myself. Genuine, fully, wholly myself. Goofy, whatever I want to do, say, or whatever. I'm not the dad, you're being weird. No, she doesn't care. She really, truly doesn't care. And I love that about her. And my wife and I are the same around each other too. So I love that we're finishing the show on that statement there. It's not who I can be. It's who can you be when I'm around you. And that is so impactful a statement, because it speaks to everything that I want to try to accomplish in life, is for people to feel like when I walk in the room, I want people to feel like they're like, it changes the way your day is happening. And I love that. And I want to say one thing, Marcy, as we wrap up here. I'm very selective as to the people that I do bring on the EOR podcast, and I'll tell you why. Because ultimately it's about the concept of personal and professional development. I want people to become better. Everything I've done in life has always been about helping others get better. And I want people on the show that bring many different theories, movements, practical applications, implementations for people to pick and choose what works for them. I think this is something that it's ubiquitous. It could be applied in everyone's lives. But I want to thank you for being here and bringing this to my listeners, because this isn't this isn't corporate stuff. There's no arena that this specifically applies to. It literally is about being a human being, doing and being in the presence of others and truly showing up for them. So thank you very much for being here today.
Such an honor, Quinn. I really, really hope that you feel my appreciation and my gratitude.
Yeah. It's been excellent. Thank you very much, Marcy.